So yes, here we are on TikTok on the 10th of January, 2026. It's been a little while since I did any kind of tiki-taki, and I wanted to see what it was doing. Auto-translates comments posted in other languages. Real-time assist. Co-host. Sure. Extended chats. Floating window. Hey, I remember that from the end of Titanic. Ever since Charlie Kirk passed, been seeing more Nick Fuentes on my algorithm. Those two things might be somewhat related. Okay, I appreciate people yelling at me co-host. I must say that I'm not entirely positive what that means. Co-host. Okay, where is co-host? I'm just looking at the chat here. I'm looking at all of this stuff. Co-host is grayed out. Co-host is not available in director mode. Okay. Yes, okay. All right, we go co-host. And then what? Get started. Yes. Okay. Looking for people to co-host. Connecting. I don't know what this means, but I bet you it's something that we can talk about. Wouldn't that be delightful? All right, let's cancel that, because that does not seem particularly exciting. Settings. Allow invitations from friends. Show expired invites. I don't care about echo check. I only care about echo chamber check. All right. Multi-guest. Oh, God. What does this mean? Oh, somebody wants to talk. Accept. Let's see if this tech works.
Hello, Stefan.
Hey, how's it going?
It's literally my birthday today.
Hey,
you are my
happy
birthday
birthday
present.
to you. My birthday present is not finishing that song. So, how old are you, brother?
I am 37.
I'm sorry. I think you may have dropped a T there. 37.
30
youths. Are you from England?
I'm from Scotland, but
Scotland!
I live in England.
I great. And how's your life going at 37?
Pretty good. I've actually been inspired by you, so I try and run a little TikTok channel. I try to do a bit of philosophy.
Oh, congratulations. How long have you been listening to and or watching what it is that I do?
I've been keeping up with you on TikTok, which hasn't been much. But when you got banned off of YouTube, I've got to say, you disappeared off there for me.
Oh, yeah, I think I remember something about that, if I remember rightly. Yeah, there was a bit of a, I don't know what you say, like a hiccup or a speed bump in my career. Just it's like a minor side quest called the absolute arse end of the known social universe.
Yeah. Just happened to just cite some facts that were uncomfortable.
Well, it's kind of funny, right? Because, talking about race and IQ and the other stuff that I was talking about, the wild thing is that was completely verboten back in the day, even though, because people would get mad at me like it was just my opinion or something that I wanted to talk about. It's just that, it seemed kind of important to talk about because every difference between ethnic outcomes was being blamed on evil white people and particularly white males. And as a white male, of course, I took that a little personally, and I did not want that out in society. So I decided to talk about it, and I actually interviewed 17 world-renowned experts on human intelligence just so people could understand that it wasn't just my opinion and all of that. And, of course, I was trying to get people to have compassion. I remember on X, there was somewhere in Africa, there was a school that had been built, I think, by Europeans in the past. They'd left, and rain was pouring in, and they were just sitting there trying to do their. And I was like, "Come on, let's just look at the average IQ. Please don't be racist. Please, just have some sympathy. It's not their fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the way of the world. It's the way of evolution." And I was really appealing for sympathy to, because if some people are underperforming, there's some cause, right? And if the cause is IQ, well, that's important.
I think that a lot of people take the view that their success, they should own their own success. And I think that to look at other people who didn't get that success and say, hey, it's your fault, is kind of not a compassionate thing to do. And sort of like, if you have the success, it kind of gives you the burden to always help people. That's why I think, like, charity is like you taking an involved, helping way of society. Giving money to taxes is like being a deadbeat dad.
Right. Well, except the deadbeat dad is a choice. The taxes stuff is kind of forced, right?
Yeah, but the deadbeat dad will get child support taken off him. So it's the same way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, so the funny thing is that I took about, 5 years or so off social media, sort of mainstream social media. I was on Facebook, but I get so little engagement on Facebook. I think it's mostly suppressed, or maybe just people aren't interested, but I don't think that's the case. I have like quite a lot of followers, but I get almost no engagement. So I went to sort of the less mainstream kind of outlets. But the funny thing is that when I came back on X, which was a couple of months ago, I think it was late summer or something like that. I was invited back in the past, but I didn't come in because if you do me wrong, which X did me wrong or Twitter did me wrong, then they owe me apologies and restitution, which I didn't really get. But then my daughter made a case, which I've mentioned on the show before. My daughter basically said, well, can they legally give you any apologies? Because if they apologize for banning you, doesn't that open them up to mass liability from other people, like whatever it is, right? And so if it's impossible for someone to give you apologies and restitution, then isn't it unfair to have that standard as a requirement? And I'm like, oh, good point. Good. So she was right. And she also said, you could Peaceful Parenting. I just finished the book, which you guys should check out, peacefulparenting.com. It's free. And so I came back on X.
Yeah, it seems weird because everyone else got back. Tommy Robinson got back, Trump got back, and you were kind of like caught up in that band of just like, we're getting rid of all the people who said undesirable things.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone else got reinstated, but you certainly didn't get back.
Well, I did after I got reinstated later, but I didn't choose to activate it until my daughter made the case. So anyway, so the funny thing is that I was talking about IQ and differences as a way of cooling racial tensions, right? So the funny thing is that I get back and the conversation, I'm not kidding about this, guys. Like, the conversation is about 10,000 times blunter and harsher and more aggressive than I even dreamed of. And that's a wild thing when it's like, you can't even mention this topic. And then I come back and everyone's talking about it in again, to me, a more blunt and harsh way than I would, because I'm kind of British. And like, the conversation has escalated in ways that, well, I actually I did kind of predict this. Honestly, I don't mean to be, oh, look at me, so smart. But I did kind of predict this. So what I said when people were saying, oh, if you talk about these dangerous topics and so on, then you're going to get banned. And I remember saying very clearly on X, you can probably still find it in my history, I said, if I get banned for talking about, X, Y, Z, ABC, like these variety of topics that I was talking about, if I get banned, these topics are going to escalate beyond anyone's comprehension. Because I'm the reasonable guy. I'm the guy who's like got the scientific experts. I'm really moderating the conversation. I'm bringing this in a respectful fashion and so on. So if I get banned, this conversation moves from the moderates to and I don't want to say extremists because that's just kind of unfair, right? But it's going to move from the sort of rational center, it's going to move more extreme. I was sort of holding this, I was the center guy holding stuff together because I had like 2 million followers and I was doing like 10 million views and downloads a month. So I was like the center trying to get the left and the right. And I said, if they ban me, then this conversation, everything that I'm talking about, will escalate and divide. And so that's happened.
There's no niceties at all.
Yeah.
There's no even pretending to be polite. There's no compassion anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so obvious with this case with the woman who got knocked down in Minnesota. And the left is, both sides are just being lying by omission just to support their own case. Like, they pick a side, they will only report on the facts, only show the camera angle that looks favorable to their side.
Well, what do you
And
think
both
happened? She didn't get knocked down. She got shot 3 times. I'm sure you know that. But what is it that you think happened in Minnesota 3 days ago?
I think that she was willfully blocking traffic. She was sideways on the road. There's no doubt about that. They were being quite snarky to the police. I think the guy was just falling back on that there's a likelihood that once she hits him with the car, he has probable cause to shoot her.
Well,
I don't
let's
think he
say
was
so.
really...
If the car was going at him, and we, I don't know if you're a lawyer. I'm certainly not. So we're just talking from a moral standpoint. If she was gunning the car and he was in the way, because we don't know if she was gunning it. She saw him. We can see this in the video that was just released yesterday, which is the officer's cell phone recording. So she definitely knew he was there. She sees him. There's eye contact. Her wife gets in the car and says, "Drive, drive." And she hits the gas. And he has a split second, right? Because the tires are slipping on ice. So before the tires bite down, you know this from Scotland, right? It's a cold-ass place like Canada. If somebody's gunning tires on the ice, then the moment those tires bite through the ice and hit the tarmac, the car is going to lurch forward at very high speed, right? And so that's my question is, if she was gunning the car and he was in front of it or was at risk, because you don't know if it's going to be a split second or a half a second until those tires bite and you get traction.
I think he definitely made the conclusion that the car was a weapon at that point.
Okay.
I think she was, if at least she was being reckless, if she was not intentioned to hit him, she was acting in a way which could cause him serious harm. So she was still, I think, behaving in a way that wasn't safe.
Right. I mean, we can't read her intentions because she's dead. And even if she wasn't dead, self-reported intentions, particularly when there are legal issues involved, cannot be trusted. Right. So let's say it would go from first-degree murder down to involuntary manslaughter. If she did not intend to, then she's going to say, "I didn't intend to." But there's no, we can't read minds, right? There's no fail-safe polygraph or anything like that. So we can't read her intentions, but we do know that she saw him. He was in front of the car. Her girlfriend, her wife said, "Drive, drive." She hit the gas and he was in danger. Now, the argument, which some people say, and again, if you guys could share the live stream, I'd appreciate it. So the argument some people say is that a cop is not allowed to put himself in front of the car and then say, "You have to stop," that's escalation or risk or whatever it is. And I don't know. He wasn't right in front of the car, but you don't know which way the car is going to go. And I'm sure you know that this Officer Ross, 6 months ago, was trying to arrest someone who was a convicted pedophile that the local police had not agreed to arrest because it's a sanctuary city. They resist the ICE, the immigration control. And so he was trying to arrest this Hispanic fellow who was a convicted pedophile. He had been sexually abusing, I think repeatedly, his 16-year-old stepdaughter. I don't know for how long. She was 16, I guess, when it was found out, so I assume it was longer than that. She was younger when it started. So he was trying to arrest that guy, and the guy trapped his arm in the window and drove down the road, messing this guy up, 33 stitches, mangled limbs, and so on, right? So there definitely is a history of trauma and danger with this guy. Could that have made him more hair trigger? Well, yeah, I would imagine it would have. However,
I think
it still was that she hit the gas. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think he just acted within the way that the state expects an officer of the law to act anyway. The state thinks it has exclusive right to use the force. If you even attempt to bear it against them, they can kill you. That's really how they view it. And
yes,
I think even in cases where...
the government will escalate until you comply or die. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think even in the cases when it's a left-wing government and they want these protesters to kind of like have a bit more freedom to do what they want. Those officers are being told not to do their training. So it's like, they're being overruled. But I think the natural way that they're trained to react would just result in you getting killed every time.
Yeah, I mean, you can resist and you can go limp, right? And they'll just pick you up and put you in the car. So you can go limp, you can go rubber bones and so on. I don't think that's resisting arrest. It's just not complying overly. And so you can do that. But if you forcefully resist the police, they will escalate until you comply or die. That is how the law works. And it's funny, I think people don't want to look at that because they want the government to do everything. And this is a reminder that every time you ask the government to do something, you are demanding that people point guns at others. They like to think of this like this friendly, the government, it's like, it's going to give you food and healthcare and subsidized housing, and it's your buddy and it's your uncle and it's your friend. It's like, no, agent of force. Agent of force. It is the social institution with the legal monopoly on the initiation of the use of force. That is
kind of weird how they have that power too, because the default is you have the king, and then you've got your courts, which is the people's protection from the king. And then people have the right to investigate their own crimes, put the charges against a judge, and then the police were kind of tacked on after the fact, and then they became the de facto people of the law.
Right. Yeah, so I think people don't like to see the violence of the state because it reminds them that it's not a social contract. This is a system that you're born into that can use force against you. Now, you can say, can they use force at will and so on? It's like, sure. I mean, they can do stuff. And if you disagree, then you have to deal with it in court. Do not be a street lawyer. Once the police have made the decision to arrest you, you cannot turn, there's no turning back. Like once they have established, and this woman, again, I'm sure this will all come out in court, the woman, Renee Good, and her wife were definitely parking and interfering and interceding. And if you decide to interfere in a policeman's lawful execution of his powers, then you have broken the law and they're going to arrest you. The moment that a policeman decides to arrest you, like you can talk yourself out of it ahead of time. The officer says, hey, you're interfering. And you're like, okay, sorry, I'll move along. No biggie, right? Maybe you can avoid that process, but it's like a giant piece of machinery. You turn it on and you can't, once that machinery is turned on and you're being pulled down into the law, once that machinery is turned on, right or wrong, good or bad, that machine will chew you up if you resist it. And this is what people, I think, don't seem to get or understand. It's like once the policeman says, get out of the effing car, and for whatever reason, right or wrong, they have said, I'm arresting you. You are interfering with my lawful duties. You are obstructing my lawful duties, which is illegal. You've broken the law. I'm now arresting you. And I assume that's what get out of the effing car meant. Then you're in. Like you're in that machine. You're in that process. And if you resist that process after it starts, yeah, they will escalate. The police do not have, in a sense, the right or even the ability, once they have decided to arrest you and once they've observed you breaking the law. And we, in a sort of generalized sense, we don't want selective enforcement of these things, right? We don't want the police to say, well, that guy's breaking the law. I'm just going to ignore him. This other guy is breaking the law and I'm going to arrest him. So once the police, once they see you breaking the law, they have to arrest you. And if you fight, they will escalate until you comply or die. And boy, I wish they taught this kind of stuff in schools because it seems pretty obvious to me. But again, I've been studying the state for decades, so I kind of get it. But yeah, it should be different. It's like, no, you don't want it to be different. Because if there's selective enforcement, everyone's going to cry that it's unfair, right?
And that's why there is legal... sorry.
No, go ahead.
Hello, sir. I was just going to say that's why there is this legal avenue. If you, if there is something the police did wrong, there is legal avenues to deal with it afterwards.
Yeah, you can get your lawyer. You can file a complaint. You can sue them and so on, right? So there is There are lots of legal options that you can pursue, but what you can't do is decide you don't want to be arrested. I mean, you can. You can do anything you want. You can choose to gun your car at a cop, and he's going to defend himself.
I don't identify as arrested.
I don't identify as a moving car.
That's right. By the way, I wanted to say, sir, thank you for the wonderful philosophy you've given us for many, many years. I always gladly recommend Peaceful Parenting book to people, especially now. Some people, it's starting to have kids at my age, and now they're, so I always promote you to them and all the good resources and all the wonderful things you've done. And not, especially that you're not just a sort of political talking head, but that you are someone who actually implements things in people's lives that they can actually do. And that's why I've always loved and appreciated you and the wonderful work you've done.
Well, that is very kind, and I really, really do appreciate that. You get a lot of negative feedback as a public philosopher, particularly a moral philosopher, and so when I get to these lovely warm oases of positive feedback, it really does mean a lot to me, and I really do appreciate that. How long have you been listening?
2016.
Jeez, 2016. I literally can't believe that it's 10 years ago. Like,
I grew up on you.
Wow. That is fantastic. I appreciate that. You've never called in though, right?
No, never. I haven't. I've had a crazy time, but you've always been a wonderful influence on me, and I try to extend that to other people. You've definitely helped me become much more reason-based, rational, and calm individual. And I always try to make sure I apply UPB to every facet of life.
I appreciate that. And it's funny because I grew up without a father. And of course, I know that some people are like, internet dad, but I'm telling everyone, I'm sliding over that waterfall to internet granddad. Like it's coming, man. My daughter is 17 now. So, she's going to be out of the home, I think, relatively soon. And, out there doing her thing.
17?
She's 17, bro.
Dude, I remember when Izzy was like 9 and and he first started getting the Minecraft like YouTube channels with it. Dude, that was woof.
Yes. I mean, I don't, she's got her own private life and all of that, so I don't share too much. But yeah, it's a pretty wild thing to see people from, I still very vividly remember the sound was like, it's like wacka, 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 wacka. It's like the tiny little heartbeat, when you get that ultrasound. I don't know if you're a dad, but your wife gets pregnant, you get that wacka, wacka, wacka. And it's so fast. It's just like a little tiny bean with a heart in the belly. And it's amazing to see all the way to what she's doing, like all of the great stuff that she's doing now from that tiny little blurry wacka, wacka, wacka in the belly. It's amazing. Watching a child grow up is like watching an entire civilization rise up like Atlantis out of the ocean with all of its finery and its beauty and its independence. It's a wonderful thing. A wonderful thing.
Absolutely. I haven't gotten there yet. I am 25, but it is, I imagine it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. I definitely look forward to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I hope that I've helped people to understand just how cool and fun parenting is. And, I was just thinking about this the other day. I don't know if it was the case with you and if anybody wants to unmute and we can just have a round table to chat about this kind of stuff or whatever's on your mind. But when I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I was born in 66. So 1980, I was 14 and sort of starting to date in the early 80s. And there was absolutely nothing about getting married, settling down, and having kids. It wasn't in my friends. It wasn't in my girlfriend's family. I never had a dad say, well, what are your intentions towards my daughter? You've now been dating for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. Nothing. Mm-hmm. I even met them. Nothing. There was zero feedback, guidance. I don't know if it was a boomer thing. I don't know if it was a depressed after World War II thing. I don't know if it was an immigrant thing. I don't know, but there was nothing. I was thinking about, I had one friend. Sorry, I'll shut up in a sec. I had one friend my entire teenage years whose parents gave him any advice. His father was a professor and helped him to become a professor. He later became a professor and gave him feedback, at least professionally and so on. But I don't know a single person whose parents gave them dating advice, marriage advice, have kids early, balance education and fertility. Like, I don't know anyone whose parents gave them any advice at all. And there was this whole, like, go out until the streetlights come on and there were literally TV stations back in the day. They used to broadcast out of the eternally on fire Buffalo. We've turned Buffalo Auditorium into a mud pit. Cheektowaga, Cayuga, Yuga. There was all of these like monster trucks and everything seemed to be on fire all the time. And they had, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? And it's like, no, a lot of times they didn't. And so that laissez-faire stuff was glorious anarchy in a way. But talk about Lord of the Flies, completely untutored stuff. So is it different now? Do your parents sit down with you and say, here's how your life can shape, here's the decisions you need to make? And is anyone getting any guidance or parenting these days? Or I was just part of the lost generation?
I am proud to say my father and my mother, obviously they're not, maybe like philosophers or grand researchers and maybe break things down the way you do. I think you have a wonderful knack of explaining things. But they definitely did have, at least to some extent, these types of discussions with me. And it certainly at least gave me the groundwork to look into things further. So I'm very thankful for that.
My dad and my stepmom, they gave me lots of advice and guidance in that realm, but they were also so abusive and chaotic and crazy that I just had, like, they had no credibility with me. And I saw their lives and I was like, whoa, I don't want anything like that. Even though they were Christian, and they had like a large family and they worked and all that, they were just so abusive that I just didn't listen to them.
I'm sorry to hear about that, of course. What? Give me a rundown of the kind of advice that they gave you.
My dad was very much of like, sorry, there's like an echo and that's kind of throwing me off. Sorry. They would say things like, get married, have lots of kids. The father and the man is the head of the household, and he should be the one to lead and guide the family. Like all those traditional values, like just they would project that image out into the world. But then in their private lives, it was just, my dad was having affairs. There was drug abuse, alcohol abuse, violence, beating the kids, like just crazy. But then when they were out in public and we would all go to church together, they just had this facade of like, we're this perfect, happy, amazing family, So growing up, I was like, you guys are fake. Like, why am I going to listen to anything that you're saying? It was like they were living double lives almost. So yeah, they tried, but it just didn't make any sense. It didn't add up.
Did they ever address the do as I say, not as I do? Because you could have an uncle who's a chain smoker, right? I remember when I was in theater school, some of the actors were toying with smoking, and I remember a guy who was there for the director program was a smoker, and I remember him sitting down and saying to everyone, listen, guys, toy with smoking, just be aware of where it's going to lead it to you. I spend $100 a month on cigarettes. This is like back in the day, right? And, I've tried to quit like 12 times. It's more addictive than heroin. There's a higher relapse rate. I can't run upstairs. Like, can't do sports. Like, he gave the whole, now, he didn't quit smoking, but he was saying, don't do what I did, right? Don't do what I do. Like, you could have the fat uncle who says, don't overeat. But he's not saying don't overeat because I never did. So people can give you good advice if they've lived bad lives, but did they ever, if your father said, my job is to guide people, and then he says, and what I've mostly been doing is guiding all of the single moms in the neighborhood onto my groin. Did he address that discrepancy or dichotomy at all?
No, not really. It would always be like they couldn't handle any criticism. And like if you would try to point out, the hypocrisy and what they would say versus what they would do, they would say things like, well, you hate the sin, but you don't hate the sinner. And, we always have to try our best, but, who are you to judge? Only God can judge us. Like stuff like that. They were very dismissive. Like they didn't want to be accountable for their mistakes. And a lot of times too, like they didn't even think they were making mistakes. Like when it came to how they disciplined, like they would tie my siblings up to chairs and like force feed them, whipping with belts, like just crazy stuff. And they thought like, well, that's how you discipline. They do this because we love you, you know? And, but they did really try. This was with my dad and my stepmom. They did really try to give moral guidance, and like in their minds, right? They would take us to church, and they'd always want to discuss the Bible and things like that. But it was so confusing, because I was like, well, it seems like they're really trying to be good people, but they just can't do it, you know? I don't know.
Now, you know, I love the ladies. You know, I don't have to tell this audience, but the one thing that drives me a little crazy about y'all, and not in necessarily the most positive way, is this intention thing. Now, I get men and women are different. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with this thing, but this reading of intentions. I saw this all over the X with the Renee Good, the woman who was shot. It's like, well, she didn't mean to. She panicked. She didn't understand. She freaked out. Like this reading of intention. So when you say, well, they meant to, they wanted to, they this, they that, I'm not saying you're wrong. You know your family infinitely better than I do. But how do you know?
No, I know. I think it was just like an excuse. Like it was just a way of them to get out of being accountable for anything. Like you would point it out and be like, well, you're not doing this, or look what you did. And they'd be like, they would say, they would teach us that like your intentions would matter more than what you actually did. And they would say things like, only God knows your heart. And it's like, well, what you're doing is insane. Like, what do you mean?
Well, and if they're going to say only God knows your heart and you hate the sin, love the sinner, then how do they get to tie kids to chairs and beat them?
Yeah, exactly. None of it made sense. Like it was crazy town. It was
I've seen this a lot. It's not an argument, but it's just telling you what I've seen, which is that if people are given excuses, they will continue to behave badly. And part of one of the things that, you know, bad people don't like me. I mean, I think that's been fairly well established. And one of the reasons that bad people don't like me is I take away intentions and I replace them with evidence. Because intentions are subjective. Intentions can be lied about. Actions cannot be. So if you get beaten by your parents and they say, well, no, I did it because I loved you. It's like, I can't judge whether you thought you loved me or whether you thought that was an expression of love. Because you can lie about intentions, but you can't lie about actions. And so the intentions thing, I think, is in the realm of mysticism. You know, my invisible friend told me that it was okay. How can you verify that? There's no way to verify any of that. And the female thing is to read intentions. The male thing is to look at actions. Again, this is much generalized, and I think this is where a lot of confusion happens between men and women. So you've heard this statement. Maybe your family has used it. I'm sure everyone has heard the statement, which is, your father, if he's abusive, he loves you so much, he just doesn't know how to express it in the right way.
Yep.
That kind of stuff, right? Well, we had the best intentions. Oh, well, we did the best we could with the knowledge we had. And I'm like, how can any of that be verified? How can any of that be verified? It's like if somebody just comes and beats the living crap out of you for no reason, and then his sister says, no, he meant to give you a hug, he just doesn't really know how. And it's like, what? Bro, beat me up.
He killed you instead.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, so this intention thing, and like, how is it possible? Because this is, you know, I regularly get my mind blown about what happens. Like this thing in Minneapolis, right? Happened 3 days ago. I've seen at least 4 different camera angles, and people are still disagreeing about what happened. And the only disagreement is about intention. And intention is where the left and the right have their greatest division. Because the left and women generally read things according to intention. And the right, often men, read things according to outcome. So if the welfare state has been shown to be harmful, women will say, but the intention of the welfare state is to help people. the mission statement of the welfare state is to help people, and maybe they do it wrong, but they mean well and they want to help and blah, 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 right? And on the right, they say, well, I don't care. Like, I care that it harms people and it's got moral issues and so on. And women will go to intentions, and intentions are innately non-confrontational. Because what do you say? If somebody, your parent abuses you, and then they say later, no, it came out of love. Maybe it wasn't perfect. I did the best I could. I meant to. I was showing love in the best way I knew how, and so on. You can't disprove that. Whereas you can say, no, you hit me with belts, and you didn't get, like, did you ever study any better parenting techniques? Did you ever go to parenting school? Did you ever read any books? Did you ever figure out any other ways of disciplining other than beating with implements? So, because this is the kind of questions that I give to people in the call-in shows, which is, your parent says, well, I beat you, but it was with love and good intentions and so on. It's like, okay, well, if I failed a test, right? Like, if you, I don't know if this happened to you, let me know. If you fail a test because you didn't study for it, oh, I forgot, or I thought I knew the material, or whatever it is, or I couldn't find my book. What does your parents say if you fail the test?
Should have done better.
It's not an excuse.
Yeah, it's not an excuse. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You, if you've ever done this thing, it's like Sunday night at 9 p.m. and you say to your mom, "Ooh, I need a bunch of materials for a school project."
Yeah.
And what does she say?
Oh, she would freak out.
Yeah. And what would she say?
My mom would start screaming.
Yeah, she'd be like, "How long have you known about this? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Everything's closed now. I can't." Right? Blah blah blah. Right?
Yep.
And if you say, "Oh, I thought we had the materials," what would she say?
Oh God, I don't even know. Just screaming.
Right.
I think I would block most of it out.
She'd say, "Well, you should have asked. How dare you assume it makes an ass out of you and me?" I put the letters together, right? So, I thought it was next week, or I forgot, or like, there's no excuses for you as a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old. And so your intentions don't matter to abusive parents. I thought we had the materials. I forgot it was this week. Whatever, right? I thought I was going to do something different. I changed my mind, like whatever, right?
Yeah, complete double standard.
Right. So parents abuse, well, everyone abuses because they do not judge intentions. But then when you call them out on their abuse, what suddenly becomes the most important thing?
Their intentions.
Look at that. The mystical, invisible friend of absolution and forgiveness has now manifested, has now entered the chat. Oh. Well, in the past, it was only the actions that mattered, not the intentions. If you throw a ball to your brother in the house and it knocks over a precious vase, and you say, "Oh, I didn't mean it to knock over the vase. I was just trying to toss it to," right? What do they say?
Oh, doesn't matter. You broke the vase. You're going to have to fix it, or you're going to get punished, or yeah.
Right. No, and my mother would give me these kind of confusing instructions, and if I tried to get clarity, she'd just get angry. And then if I did it wrong, she'd get angry. And if I said, "Well, I thought that," and she'd say, "Don't think," just right. So my intentions didn't matter at all. The only thing that mattered was the outcome. Well, I meant to mow the lawn. I just didn't, quite get round to it. I meant to, right? That doesn't matter. So abusers are very common in when they have power over you, your intentions don't matter. But if you ever call them out on their abuse, suddenly, ooh, look at all of these magical intentions that come in at a giant protective circle that protect them from all criticism, because they judge you by your actual actions with no reference to intentions. But if you ever judge them by their actual actions, well, the only thing that matters is intentions. And intentions are mysticism and fantasy. And intentions, they really escalate, right? Because if somebody makes up intentions, I mean, first of all, I just think they're lying. I just think that they're lying completely. Because they're specifically pivoting from what can be verified, which is, did you hit me with a belt, to things which can't be verified, which is these made-up ghosts of endless defensiveness called intentions. And what are you supposed to say?
As a child, you can't really say anything.
Yeah, but even as an adult, if you confront them, what are you supposed to say?
Yeah.
Well, I asked for evidence, right? So when my mother was like, "Well, I tried to do my best," right? I would be like, I said, "Well, that's a claim. What's the evidence? Like, you've kept every book." My mom's a hoarder, right? "You've kept every book you've ever read." Like, she lives in a fairly small apartment, mountains of books, right? And I'm like, "Okay, show me the parenting book." Now, that's not confrontational. If she'd shown me 5 parenting books that said scream at and hit your children, I'd have been like, "Well, those are shitty parenting books, but at least I understand why you did what you did." But I said, "Well, okay, so if you say I did the best I could, I'm going to need to see some evidence."
And when I have confronted them and asked them, like, show me why you did the things you did, it always turned into a sob story of them trying to get me to feel bad for them and pity them and be like, look at all the things I suffered through and endured for you and just all that kind of
I
stuff.
guess I'm just the worst mother who
Yeah.
ever drew breath. I guess I didn't do anything right.
Yeah.
I guess. Oh, yeah.
And they
This
do that
collapse
until
into manipulative self-pity is really gross.
Yeah.
Because
It's
you were never
crazy
allowed to do that as a kid, right?
No, never.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my entire purpose in a lot of what I do is to just keep taking away people's bullcrap excuses. Like, just take away people. Because if people have excuses, then they'll act badly. Like, the badness and the excuses are the same thing. Like, if you think of some rich kid, his dad is, super wealthy, best friends with the mayor, good buddies with the chief of police. Does he have any particularly concern about negative consequences?
No.
No, because he's going to get bailed out by all the negative consequences. He's just going to get bailed out. So it's the same thing with excuses. Excuses are like the rich dad who knows the mayor and the chief of police, and you're never going to get into any trouble. I mean, you can probably run over a homeless guy and they'll say, "Oh, we can't recognize those skid marks. I guess we'll just bury the homeless guy." And so excuses are infinite bailouts, infinite avoidances of responsibility. So people do bad things because they genuinely believe that the excuses are going to work. And by taking away those excuses, it's painful for the people who've already done the bad things. But if you have like 2 brothers, the younger brother, the older brother, from this rich family, and you had a really super indulgent mom and bails them out of everything and gets them out of any problems whatsoever. And then one day, maybe she marries some new guy who won't let that happen, or the dad comes back and he puts a stop to that or whatever. Then they say, "Listen, like, stop speeding because you're going to get ticketed, and stop drinking and driving because," and let's say the kid does drink and drive, and then they just let him spend time in prison. Well, that's going to be really tough for the older kid, but the younger kid probably ain't going to drink and drive because he sees that example. So there's the people who've already made the mistakes. I take away their excuses, they get really angry. Because deep down they're saying, "Well, man, if I'd have known I wasn't going to have this excuse, I would have behaved better. If I'd known my dad wasn't going to bail me out, I wouldn't have drunk and drive." Right? So there's those people, but then there's all the people coming up and say, if I take away those excuses, they can behave better. And that's always the challenge of, like when they say, "Oh, yeah, smoking is really bad for you. It's going to cause you lung cancer." I mean, that really sucks for the people who've been smoking for 40 years, but hopefully the people will not smoke. When they're younger, they won't get into smoking. And so whenever you have that kind of moral revolution, all the people who made the decisions on the expectation that they were going to get away with it, and they can't get away with it now, they just blow up in rage because it feels like it's
like when you call them out for their excuses, it's like you're knocking out the legs of the table that everyone's sitting at, and they just look at you like, "What are you doing? You're destroying everything we've built." And it's like, "No, I'm just getting rid of the excuses and showing you there's nothing here." And then everything falls apart, and then they point at you and they're like, "You're the bad one. You're evil." And it's like, I'm just showing you that we're not standing on anything here, But
yeah, a criminal is not going to do his crime if he knows for sure he's going to get caught. The whole point of doing crime is you think you're not going to get caught. And so the criminal acts of abuse against children are all performed because the parents think there aren't going to be negative consequences. They inflict unjust, horrible, abusive, negative consequences on their children on the assumption that they're not, as parents, going to experience those negative consequences with blowback and judgment or anything like that in the future. And so
that's what's happening with all the women right now too. Like, I've been down some rabbit holes, and there's militia groups of women forming who genuinely believe if they don't put their lives on the line that we're going to fall into like some Handmaiden Tale style world. You know what I mean? Like they're so radicalized. It's insane. It's really scary.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's anything to do with the Handmaid's Tale because they keep wanting Islam to come in to the West and they keep defending Islam, which is not known for its overly sensitive treatment of women's issues. So I think they're just
doesn't make
programmed.
any
I just think that
sense.
they're whipped into a kind of generic mob-based hysteria with no reason or rationality behind it. It's just like, oh, hate those redheads. And it's like, it's nothing to do with any principle. They just hate the redheads because they're told to. Because it's not like oh gosh, Donald Trump is taking away women's rights. It's like, yes, but have you been to the Middle East? How many rights have you been to Iran? Under the mullahs, how many rights do you think women have there? And yet they don't have any issue with that. I mean, you can literally see women in the West, female politicians putting on the hijab.
And I think that's also why, too, more women are becoming radicalized, like against the patriarchy, because they are saying that the issue is just men in general, globally. That's kind of like what the conversation is like.
Right, which is to say that all ethnicities, races, and cultures treat women equally well or equally badly. And we just know, very simple fact, that that's not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, we have some other people in. If you want to unmute, I'm happy to hear what's on your guys' mind as well. Thank you guys for dropping by the way.
I'm going to try to not be low echo. I'm going to try to not be but your definition or your philosophical definition of love is awesome. It changed everything for me about loving myself, loving my partner, loving other people.
Okay, tell me what worked for you best about that definition.
Well, maybe I should repeat it, make sure I get it right. Love is the contrary response to virtue. It's a virtuous person. Everything else is manipulation and codependency. Is that correct?
Yeah, love is our involuntary response to virtue if we're virtuous. And hatred is our involuntary response to virtue if we're evil, or evil if we're virtuous.
Yeah, well, first of all, I thought I was running around, why doesn't this person change? Why doesn't this person change? And I thought, you know what? Maybe I need to look at myself. Maybe I need to love myself. Spend time taking care of my health, taking care of my brain by reading positive things. It also into an area of becoming one person. In other words, when I'm at work, I act one way. When I come home, I'm another way. Why can't I be the same person every place I go? Why do I have to put on a show for neighbors and put on a show for these people? Why can't I just be a good, virtuous person everywhere I go? Why can't I stand up for weak people? Why can't I point out evil wherever I go? Why does it have to be a big act every place? I think so many people are playing so many different parts, they don't know who they are anymore. Of course, I'm a recovering people pleaser, so I had to figure out who I was and changing for everybody else.
So what are the big differences when you're out in the world and at home for you?
Now, not so much. In other words, I like to have fun when I'm out, be all stuck, dance at parties, just sit there in the corner, observing everybody. Now I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to get up and dance. If nobody's
Sorry, can
dancing,
you just lean in a bit? Your microphone is kind of coming and going.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, because there's a lot of people, and this is part of the great mystery of the universe, right? Part of the great mystery of the universe is, why do we treat strangers better than our immediate family? And it is, I remember as a kid, I remember two things. One is that I'd hear, I grew up in a pretty trashy neighborhood, and you'd hear these couples screaming and fighting and kissing, and then there'd be this big makeup stuff, and then they'd scream and fight, and I was just like, just be nice. Why is it, if you claim to love someone, just be nice? Why is this so, just be nice? I remember thinking that, and, when I finally met the woman who was just nice, we've been married, tomorrow is our wedding anniversary, 24 years. And just be nice has turned out to be kind of important in relationships. And the second is, why treat strangers better than people you live with? Why treat people just passing through your life, some waiter, some gas station attendant, some stewardess? Like, why treat people who are they're just like going past like a pole on a train? Why are you treating people better who are just passing through than the people you're actually supposed to spend your whole life with? Like, I remember talking to two siblings many years ago who were having conflict and saying, why are you treating your friends better than your sibling? I know your friends are important, but your friends will most likely come and go. But your sibling is going to be the one person who goes with you through the whole life journey. They're the only people when your parents die who remember you when you were a kid, who know your furnace, your foundational origin story, your lore, your back history. So you should treat your siblings at least as well, if not better than your friends. But of course, what happens is people think, well, my family has no choice. They have to be here, so I don't have to put any effort in, whereas other people can come and go, so I have to win them over. And so your family becomes like the DMV, right? They're just, they're just some government place where you don't have to treat people well because they have to be there. And strangers then become people you actually woo and care about and treat well. And that's such an inversal of values. Did you ever go through that phase where it's like you either see people, they're yelling at someone in the household, and then the phone rings. They're like, "Hi, how you doing? Good to hear from you." And they're like completely switch moods, and it's like, what the living heck?
I don't do that anymore, or I don't try to.
Good. Yeah, because that ding dong, hi, like that stuff where people just completely flip. It's wild because it means it's not like epilepsy. Like if somebody's having heaven forbid, someone's having a genuine epileptic attack and the doorbell rings, they don't just get up and say, "Whoa, that's better. Off I go. I'm fine." It's like that would be completely bizarre.
Love the humor. Yeah.
Yeah, that switch stuff is pretty wild, and I just have a fair amount of contempt for people like that.
Brothers and sisters. I mean, we know our each other's weaknesses, right? So we should help each other out with them weaknesses. Who teaches us to exploit that to get an advantage?
Right. And it also means people can't say, "Well, I was just too angry. I was just so angry," because if someone's having an epileptic attack and then the phone rings, like some girl is falling and twitching, and then the phone rings, she thinks it might be some guy, she's interested, she jumps up, dusts herself off, "Hello," right? Then she can't say, "I was out of control." And so when people can do that flip, when people can do that complete, yin yang flip, then they can't ever claim that they were out of control. They can't ever claim that, "Well, you made me so angry." It's like, but if the phone ring can change your anger completely, then I didn't actually make you that angry. So it's like the people. Have you ever seen these videos? I don't think they're as popular anymore, but you see these videos where some guy lifts a wallet out of the pocket of the guy ahead of him in some lineup, and then he looks up, sees the camera, he's like, "Oh, sorry," and he puts it back. Right? Well, then he didn't need to steal. Right? He's I'm caught. Oh, I'm caught. So I'm gonna put it back. And that is that's a wild thing. That is that it means that people aren't out of their control. So this is always the thing that is like my $1 million question, right? If somebody's out of control. So if somebody's really out of control, you can offer them $1 million to change their behavior, and they can't. If I'm diving, right, and I dive off the dive board and I'm in the middle of the air and somebody says, "I'll give you $1 million not to fall," I'm like, I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. And that's because I can't change that, right? And if somebody says, "Steph, I'll give you $1 million to grow hair on your head." No, I can't. I mean, I guess I could get a hair transplant, but I can't just make my hair grow, right? So I can't give me $1 million to not have blue eyes or to be 6'3" or whatever, right? So those things I can't do. But if somebody takes $1 million, if some mom or husband or wife or whatever are yelling at someone they claim to love and calling them names, and you say, "I'll give you $1 million to stop," well, they can stop. They will immediately stop. And that's where the free will stuff is. And you can't come back from that if you've abused that. You can.
Father Stefan. Kidding. So years ago, not that many years ago, arguably 4 or 5, you'd have to ask my wife, I had a plate of food and I threw it against the wall because I was pissed off. I don't even remember what I was pissed off about to this day, but I remember at that moment, of course, the results are people flee and I've got a mess to clean up, right? I said to myself, why am I doing this? Why, and then I kind of learned some verbiage about being emotionally dysregulated. It was about that time, actually, that I heard you on a podcast talking about your book. Talking about, well, which book? Yeah, talking about, oh my gosh.
Real-time relationships, maybe, if it was a relationship book.
Yeah, the one I quote all the time. Sorry, got a little fanboy here. The book about preferable behavior.
Oh,
Sorry.
UPB. Yeah, universally preferable behavior. Yeah.
And then, I thought, well, that's interesting, blah, 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 blah. And then I, started listening. I've started searching you out on the internet. And I started hearing about, the bomb in the brain and all this sort of thing. And I didn't know I could control my emotions. I don't mean control them, but process them. Let's say that. And, it's you and some other authors, but we're talking about you, kind of enlightened me to like, you know what? I think I've learned this behavior somewhere, that this is how people act. And of course, just getting angry and throwing things, or being on a job site and throwing a hammer across the room, it seems like low-hanging fruit on how to deal with your emotions. But I don't have that anymore. I don't have that rage because I processed where that rage came from. Half of it was from some abuse and half of it was learned behavior. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. And it is hard for us to remember when we see people act out. So we see stimulus response, right? So if my mother, again, we lived in a pretty crappy place with bad wiring. So every now and then my mother would turn on the light and it would blow the light bulb. And she'd be startled and frightened. Now, of course, I didn't know as a kid about her whole war experience and things like that. And I don't know much about her war experience, just a little bit. But of course, if she had all this PTSD from the Second World War, she turns on a light, right? And it flashes and blows. That's going to startle her. And you can even see this with Ariana Grande, right? She was in some interview and there was a backfire and she freaked out. And it's like, well, yeah, because she was at a concert where there was a terrorist attack. So of course she's got some PTSD from that, right? And plus she has to sing with that long-armed stick insect in Wicked or whatever, right? So when my mother so she'd have the stimulus response and she'd just get really, nothing works. She'd just get really angry about all of that, right? And so it would be stimulus response with no thought consideration. No, okay, here's the stimulus, and you've got like a quarter second in your mind to interrupt the stimulus response so that you don't respond automatically, right? So if you imagine, right, in traffic, if someone cuts you off and they're really racing, you might think, they're a total jerk. But if you were to find out later that their wife was giving birth and bleeding out and they had to get to the hospital, right, then you would no longer be angry at them. In fact, you'd have great sympathy and you'd be like, gosh, so you'd go from anger if you think they're just being some sort of racing jerk to they're trying to save their wife's life and the life of their baby. You'd go from angry to sympathetic, right? So the thought really matters. The perspective really matters in terms of you can't control your emotions. You can only focus on your thoughts. And another thing too, and this is what we were talking about earlier, if people are really critical of others and not critical of themselves, they'll be in a state of chronic irritation. One of the ways we avoid chronic irritation is to be humble and to give people some grace, because we ask for some grace because we make mistakes, other people make mistakes. But if you feel like you're perfect and the other people are just making all these errors, you're giving me a state of constant pride and irritation. And so the idea that between the stimulus and the response is the perspective that can change everything, right? So I got deplatformed and I could have said, this is the worst and most unjust thing. I'm going to walk away from the world. I did my best and everyone's a jerk and people don't follow me and so on. And I'm like, okay. So this gives me the opportunity. This removes from me the central danger and responsibility of being a sort of public, moral, intellectual guy, right? Which is honestly, pretty dangerous thing, as Charlie Kirk, of course, figured out. And so what I can say, oh, this is the worst thing ever. How dare the unjust people do this terrible thing to me and deplatform me and so on. Or I can say, okay, so first of all, I knew the topics were controversial. I mean, there's no point going into a boxing ring and then getting mad when you get punched. Like you're literally going into a boxing. I knew things were controversial. And there's real benefits in being out of the spotlight, right? I got to write books. I got to spend more time with my family. I got to do a lot of creative stuff. And I got, I'm not playing stadiums. I'm playing jazz clubs, right? Which has its charms and advantages as well. So it really is, it's not, I'm not all the way with Hamlet. Like Hamlet says, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. No, if you get your leg bitten off by a shark, that's not a good thing. Right? If you get some horrible, it's not like there's no good things that are coming out of what's happening to Scott Adams, at least not that are worth this horrible disease. But there's, that's very few things in life are unambiguously good or bad. Almost all of it is open to interpretation, and gratitude is one of the biggest interpretations. Like I can be mad at being deplatformed, or I can say, I'm the first moral philosopher in the history of this entire frickin' planet who had the opportunity to speak to the whole world uninterrupted for 10 years with no gatekeepers, without having to modify what it is that I said because I've got some boss or someone who's in charge of my output that I have to please. So I'm the first philosopher in human history who had genuine free speech without gatekeeping, not just to the world in the moment. Like imagine I had some radio show before there was any real recordings, and I would have influenced people in the moment, but it would not be forever. I'm fully aware everything I do is here for the next 10,000 years. Everything, like you're part of this conversation, you're going to be listened to off and on for the next 10,000 years. So I can say, oh, it's so bad I got deplatformed. It's like, how about being grateful you got to be platformed in the first place? How about being grateful that they're not making you drink hemlock or chasing you out of the city or locking you up as they do in various countries, the UK being number one these days. So how about being grateful that you got to have a platform at all rather than saying, oh, I got deplatformed. And if I had not talked about troubling but important things, then I would have wasted that opportunity of being platformed. So you can't be so addicted to eyeballs, fame, numbers, whatever it is, that you can't tell the truth, because then your fame has been corrupted and vanity has replaced honesty. So I'm incredibly thrilled I had, that time. The suppression started around 2015, 2016, of course, because of Trump. So I had 2005 to 2015, that's 10 years. And then after that, there was suppression and this and that. And I finally got deplatformed 5 years later. But I had 15 years of being able to talk to the world. And I still can do it, right? It's a smaller audience. I get all of that, but not in the future. Because the smaller audience I have now, the bigger audience I will have in the future. Because if I have a smaller audience now, I can talk about principles. When I had a bigger audience, I had to talk about current events and politics, which is fine, but it is much less important to the future. Like Mark Twain wrote a newspaper column for decades. Nobody cares about it because it was all about current events. We care about his books. That's what matters to us now. If he'd only done the newspaper column, he'd be completely invisible to history, because current events make you invisible to the future. Principles make you relevant in the future. So by deplatforming me, they were making me much more relevant in the future, if that makes sense. So again, it's just do not react. I'm not saying you do, but just to the audience as a whole. And I have to remind myself of this too. So again, I'm not preaching from any perfect place at all. But it really, really, really foundationally matters how you view things. It is not what happens to you or what you invite to have happen to you that matters. It is what you think about it, and the good and bad that you can extract from your experience is directly the quality of your happiness in life. Somebody has just asked, what is the outrage hiding under the surface? I haven't figured that out yet. Can you give me an example or jump back on if you want? Because I'm not sure what outrage you mean, because I wouldn't want to misinterpret that.
Yeah. Like, let me think. Like yesterday, for example, on your live on Locals, you had a caller who was like questioning the logical consistency of UPB and stuff like that. And I was getting I was getting like so upset. Like I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, like feeling like I wanted to like smash my head against the desk. And I'm just like, why don't people get it? Like it makes so much sense. And I get so mad and I get worked up, but a part of me kind of enjoys that feeling, I think. Like it's almost like I get like a high from it, just
Right.
like, "Arr!" like I want to fight or something. I don't know.
Rageaholic. How
Yeah,
dare you?
like
How dare you interrupt me from my cortisol?
yeah, that and then I'm thinking like, okay, that's probably not healthy. Like I don't think that's ideal for me to be a rageaholic or to get like so frustrated with people like that because it's obviously not constructive. Like it's not going to help anybody, I don't think. So then I'm like, well, why do I feel so upset about people? Like, why does it frustrate me so much? Um, and I don't know if maybe it's masking something deeper, or maybe I'm just thinking, like, looking into it too much. I don't know.
Now, I don't mean to re-traumatize you, but just for the people here on TikTok, I will mention the debate very briefly. So the debate was about ethics, and his argument was, well, why can't we have different ethical standards for tall and short people? I know that sounds kind of silly, but it's a fine question, right? It's a fine question. Why can't we have different ethical standards for tall and short people? And my case was, ethics apply to all people. A short person is as much a person as a tall person, and therefore, since ethics apply to all people, height is not a standard by which we can exempt people from ethics. And the analogy that I gave was, if you're a biologist and you have a definition of a lizard and you say the color of a lizard is unimportant, but blue lizards are the opposite of lizards, that wouldn't make any sense because a color is not foundational to whether a creature is a lizard or not. It's like cold-blooded, it gives birth to live young, it has a detachable tail, I don't know, whatever the definition of a lizard is. So if you say the color of a lizard is irrelevant as to whether it's a lizard or not, but the blue lizards are the opposite of lizards, or they're not lizards, that wouldn't make any sense because you've just said the color is irrelevant. So you can't use color to say that something is not a lizard. So given that height is an inconsequential attribute of a human being, given that height is an inconsequential attribute of a human being, you can't say, I want opposite moral rules.
Oh, Steph, you're muted.
You can't say, I want opposite moral rules for tall and short people. Because he was saying, well, what if a tall person could beat up a short person? Why couldn't that be moral? And it's because height. So that was the argument, and he kept resisting it. He kept avoiding it. He kept changing the subject. And he said, and I said, but we've proven that, right? Because he claimed to be a logician and he'd studied logic and philosophy and so on. Lizardness is a spectrum, a spectrum, like a rainbow, like a chameleon. And so, yeah, we don't say a chameleon is not a chameleon if it changes color, right? Because the definition of a chameleon is that it changes color. So he just kept resisting, and eventually I just said, I said, but we've proven it. And he said, but not to my satisfaction. Like somehow I have to please his emotions or, tickle his inner thighs in order to get him to accept it, which I do, depending on, how tall he was. But so your anger at that, I understand. Of course, it is a little frustrating because he's lying, because he's saying, I want a rational argument and I prove something, but he won't accept it, which is a falsehood. It's engaging in something under false pretenses. It would be like you invite some real estate agent out to the middle of nowhere to look at some farm that costs $1 million, right? And then you say, after she drives like an hour and a half to show you the farm, and then you say, oh yeah, no, I just wanted to look at it. I can't afford it. Like I make minimum wage. I'm broke. Right? Then the real estate agent would be frustrated and annoyed because it is implicit in getting a real estate agent out to look at a house that you can afford it. Because otherwise, if you said ahead of time, I can't afford it, she wouldn't come out, right? So there is a certain amount of deception. I don't know that it's conscious. If somebody says, I want to have a rational argument, you prove something and they won't accept it, then that is, but here's the thing. How do you avoid it? Well, let me ask you this, my friend.
Mhm.
I say this with great openness and curiosity. Maybe you are more perfect than me. Have you ever resisted a perspective because it's really upsetting?
Yes. Yeah.
I know I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah, so I think most anybody who says they haven't is probably a liar. Maybe there are perfect angels out there of absolute rationality, but
Sure.
I personally spent a lot of years avoiding the contradiction in objectivism, right? Ayn Rand's philosophy, which is the initiation of force is bad, but we should have a government that relies on the initiation of force. So I avoided that because I didn't have a better answer. I couldn't, and I didn't avoid it consciously. Like people presented this argument to me. I just kind of slithered around it and didn't really confront it. And the moment I did sort of figure out a solution to it, I went public with it. That was sort of my first published article. A Stateless Society, an examination of alternatives. So I certainly, or if I looked and said, well, this is my definition of virtue, even according to objectivism, my friends and family in my teens and 20s, are they virtuous? I'd be like, no, I'd avoided that too. And if somebody had said, hey, man, your friends and family are not virtuous by your definition, why are you spending time with them? That's uncomfortable, right? So for me, it's like, I have certainly been in his position. I like to think that I'd be more honest about it. And I'd say, ooh, this is, you know what? This is really making me uncomfortable. And I think I'm not reasoning too well here. I'd like to think that. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. I don't know, because it's been a long time since I've really been directly confronted with a contradiction. But I shouldn't say, no, people on X have pointed out when I'm wrong. And I generally will just say, yeah, you're right. Thank you. Here's the correction and so on, right? So
my
it's
frustration
humility that I've done the same thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, then I have to work on humility. And I guess my anger or frustration is kind of like an alarm, like letting myself know, like, okay, this person is being dishonest. They're potentially dangerous. Just disengage if you're not able to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just talking about like in my personal life or my, so like the feelings of frustration I was having are valid.
Yes,
But
now of
then I'm
course I could
lacking
disengage with
humility.
this guy. Sorry to interrupt. I could disengage with this guy because it's just a show, but you couldn't, and I couldn't disengage from our parents who were manipulative and hypocritical.
Yeah, that's probably why it was so triggering, because it's like it makes you feel like when you're listening to it, it's like you're reenacting or replaying it to some extent, when you were a child and how you felt. So frustrated and trapped and all those things, right?
Well,
It's
and
not
I
making
did feel annoyed and frustrated, but I didn't feel trapped because I have the magic
No.
disconnect button, right? Which we didn't
Can
have
I
as
say
kids,
one
right?
thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't believe that I'm digitally in the same room as Stefan Molyneux. It's insane to see on TikTok, and it's only like 20 people. Where you changed my life like 10 years ago. I want to explain this. Like, you're the whole reason I went to college, went into academia. Like, I just wanted to say that. That's all I wanted to say. God bless you, Stefan Molyneux, and it's good to see your face again and hear your voice.
I appreciate that, and I think I've live streamed on TikTok once before. I was just kind of curious to give it a try. So yeah, the number of people, it's not my big platform. There are other platforms with many more people, but
Yes.
that's totally fine. I really appreciate that, and the degree
Absolutely.
to which philosophy has helped people. And, I'd love to say, oh, I've come up with all of this stuff. No, I honestly feel philosophy is kind of using me. Like, I feel like a sock puppet half the time. Honestly, like when I come up with
A
arguments.
tool of philosophy, of the greats.
Yeah, I really feel like, there's an old interview with Bob Dylan where he's like, yeah, I can't write those songs anymore. I could then. And people say, well, where did that song come from? It's like, I don't know. If I knew, I'd go there more. I'd go get more songs. And so the songs come through people, and ideas come through me. So when somebody asks me a question, it is a automatic deep brain response where it's like, here's the best argument and analogy in response. Like, I'd never gotten this question yesterday about tall versus short people. And
Yeah.
there's an instinct. I don't have thoughts. Thoughts have me. And it's that humility that I can't take pride in an automatic process. Like, I can't, like Paul McCartney, when he was in the Beatles in the 60s, he had this song, right, that he thought of. And he didn't have any lyrics for it. So it was like a scrambled eggs. Oh, my dear, you have got lovely legs. And that was the song Yesterday. And he's like, he kept playing it to people. Have you heard this song? Because I just woke up with this song in my head. Now, he's done a lot of work to get there. They played a lot of a lot of gigs and they did a lot of practice. But it's a brilliant song. Lots of musicians do that much work and still don't come up with songs that are that great. And so for me, philosophy kind of comes through me. I'm sort of like I'm like a flea on the back of a charging horse. I can't even really pretend to steer it that much. I just have to and the only thing that matters to me is I have a good relationship with my conscience. So there's a certain amount of management, but a lot of it is just hanging on as philosophy kind of charges through me, which is why there's a certain amount of humility, because other people don't have that. And I'm lucky to have it. It's helped me in my life. I definitely want to help other people. But if this didn't happen to me, I couldn't have willed it, if that makes sense. Like I couldn't have sat there and said, well, I don't have the instinct or the intelligence or anything like that, but I'm just going to go and solve the problem of secular ethics. Like, that would be like, well, I'm not a musician, but I'm going to write 20 great songs that are going to last the test of time. That's just not how it works. So I think that humility as well, if we have a good instinct for reason, if we have a good instinct for communication, if we have a good instinct for ethics, in particular for virtue, recognize that that's a great gift to have. We didn't earn it directly, but we can share it with that kind of humility. Sorry, I know that sounds a little bit abstract, but I hope that makes some sense.
No, absolutely not. You couldn't have said it any better.
Good. All right. Is there anyone else who had any thoughts, issues? We've got somebody who's just joined.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello,
sir.
I just want to... Yeah.
I love the sounds of life. It's beautiful.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yes, go ahead. Can you hear me?
I think we're in drop down.
Right. I don't know where that's coming. I'm still getting used to this interface. I don't know where that's exactly coming from.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. I can hear you. Maybe you can't hear me.
I just want to say I've been watching you for years. And like the gentleman you had before, big fan and support your worldview. And you're much needed and appreciated in today's society. We need you. Had a lot of other people like you in the past, but it's rare. Because today's society is like point, click. They don't really like to talk in depth, and they don't really like to be real. And I think they're just mass produced because the school system is so completely obliterated. But you cover the spectrums, of life, and it's not just math and science and all that, but it's communication. I think that's what it is to be a real human being. It's bridging the gap between all cultures and creeds and religions and whatever, but you're still human, and you got to celebrate being human. No matter whatever you're going through, whether you're poor or rich or afraid or full of love and passion, and you're trying to help people out, or you're a contractor or whatever, you have to be a human being. You have to be who you must be, which is actually a quote, but I forgot the guy's name. Be who you must be and do what you must do. I think it was Demetrius or something like that from ancient Rome or Greece or something. But even Christ had the same type of quotes that we have a light, and that light's put inside of us. I mean, you didn't create that light. I think every single person carries a part of God, and if people desire love and acceptance, then people matter. And if people matter, then that's why I go to work, because everybody desires that, and you can't say that they don't. I mean, you have to. In fact, we're talking about the 99% of people wake up and they want to do good. So by nature, I think people are good, but they don't know that they're good because they get distracted by the flesh or pride or whatever, or fear, or maybe like governments, and mind control, whatever. But I think that by nature, and this goes against the church. The church says by nature people are bad and they need to be good only through prayer. but I think by nature, you're actually good, which is a good conversation to have with you. I need, I'm driving actually to a wedding right now, but in Massachusetts. So, I just, I'm looking forward to more conversations with you. And I think your TikTok's going to explode because people are hungry for truth, even if they're left or right. And they could be, but I think, what I've noticed is a group of people that are truth seekers can revolutionize the world. And it only takes like a few thousand. And you literally could have a movement that would destroy narcissism, would destroy lies, it would destroy selfishness. And that's the real core of what hurts society is selfish. But you're doing a great job, and I think you're in the right place at the right time. And, I saw you on Joe Rogan. I saw you on YouTube. All your stuff on YouTube has been deleted. I don't know what happened with that. But thank you for pushing through the persecution, because blessed are the persecuted.
That's
That's
gig.
what Christ said, right?
No, I appreciate that, and you're very kind, and thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful time at the wedding. Weddings are fantastic. I'm going to go to one that a friend of mine's getting married, going to go to one relatively soon. But, and I appreciate that. My humility, and again, I wrestled with it, so again, I'm not far from perfect in this way, but I would say, like, I don't wake up in the morning and say, damn, I'm proud of my kidneys. Man, did I do a great job making my kidneys. I fashioned them perfectly out of Play-Doh. I put just the right balance of electrolytes and brain cells. I don't know what the hell goes on in kidneys, right? But I would never say to myself, man, did I do a good job designing my eyeballs. It's like, no, I just inherited those. Now, hopefully I'll use my kidneys to, they purify your body or something like that, to purify your blood. So hopefully my kidneys, I can wrestle them down into some pursuit of virtue and doing good in the world, and maybe I can take some pride in that. But I would never take pride in my kidneys. I would never take pride in my eyeballs. I would never take pride, I got blue eyes. I've fashioned them well from the raw materials in the womb. It's like, no, I wasn't down there in a workshop like Minecraft forging things together on a little furnace. I just inherited all of this stuff. And it's the same thing with my brain. I inherited, and you inherited, from the brutalities of evolution, a great brain, and we have an incredible privilege to be the only 3 pounds of wetware that actually matters in the universe, which is the human brain. Everything else is just either blind forces of nature, or like matter and energy, or it's animals that are just seeking to rut and eat and sleep and so on. But we get actual meaning, we get thought, we get reason, we get to live forever in the eternity of our concepts that we can bring to the world. So the incredible good fortune that I have to not only have a human brain, to have a pretty good human brain, I'm incredibly grateful for and humbled by. And that gives me, like, I wouldn't consider myself an entrepreneur if I inherited $100 million, right? I was like, wow, I'm really good with money. I really chose the right womb to drop out of, man. That is smart. Good for me, man. I really, when I was floating around like the little souls around like Saturn around the earth, man, I picked the biggest house in the country to get born into. Man, am I smart. Be like, well, that's just good fortune. And you can't then take $100 million inheritance and just spend it all on yourself and your own selfishness. I mean, you can, but you'd be a real D-bag for doing that. And I happen to have, like, a lot of suffering in my family history produced, and my ethnic history produced some pretty good brains. And I'm very lucky to have one. And in the service of humanity is how I repay the good fortune that I have. And I think if you can get to that mindset, it's pretty hard to do wrong in this life. All right, we had somebody else who joined. I don't want to have you just joined and then immediately I end the show. But if there's anything you wanted to add, or anybody else who's on the line, if you want to add anything, I'm happy to hear. Otherwise, we may shut things down for the day. And I really do appreciate everyone who's dropped by. Sorry, I think I heard something. Go ahead.
Just real quick. Back on the subject of humility, I vividly remember that conversation you had with that logician. It was really
Sorry,
interesting.
can you
to
mic
listen
up a little or lean in a bit more? It's kind of quiet.
I'm sorry, is this better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was really interesting listening to that conversation, because you could hear in his voice as it progressed that he felt more and more out of his league. Like if he was the biggest fish in his pond and he's wandered into yours and realized I'm I'm outmatched. You could tell this is the sound of his voice. And I think that's a humility thing because he's a professor. He tells all his students what to do. Everyone comes to him with questions and he has all the answers, but he comes up against something that he's never encountered before and it just put him on the back foot and he's refused to back down. And I think it's because he came out so aggressive in the beginning. He came out guns blazing. That's hard to put that cat back in the bag. You know, you can get past with like a small slight, but if you invade another country, good luck getting out of that if you want to back out, if you know what I mean. Does that
You
make
mean
sense?
the professor from a month or two ago, is that right?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, John Balfour. Yeah, I mean, here's the funny thing is that people who come across really aggressive up front, it's interesting because what they're doing is they're setting up the relationship as win-lose. Now, I prefer, in general, win-win relationships. So when I go into a relationship, I'm looking for how we can both benefit from it. Because how else can you have good relationships unless you're winning and the other person is winning? And so when you come in, not that you, when someone like John comes in, very hostile and you're an idiot and you don't understand this and you don't understand that, then what he's doing is saying, I'm better, I'm smarter, I'm right, you're dumb, you're lesser, and you're wrong. And the funny thing is if that's true, then he should want to educate me, right? Because he's literally a professor, he's a teacher, so he should want to educate me. Because, but the only reason he would not want to educate me is if I had very clearly come out as wrong and aggressive myself. Because sometimes, if people come across really aggressive, they say, well, I have to be really aggressive because the whole world is aggressive. And I'm like, yes, but you're the common factor in the whole world being aggressive. I don't find the whole world aggressive at all. We're all having very positive and convivial conversations here, which is great. So I don't choose to get into conversations outside of the show where it's win-lose. I just won't do it. I won't do it. I'm looking for win-win. So it's like if you're going to go buy something, like say, to take the aforementioned example, you're going to go buy a house. Like you want it to be win-win. Like you both have to walk away from the interaction better. And every time I interact with someone, I'm looking for that win-win. If I can't find the win-win, I will simply disengage from the conversation. So the idea that he's going to come in and he's going to prove me wrong and he's going to, destroyed and, all the pwned and all this sort of stuff that happens, it's all appealing to people's win-lose. Because for me, let's say that I think I'm sick. I go to the doctor and the doctor tells me I'm healthy. How have I lost? I'm wrong, right? I've gained, right? Oh, I think I'm sick. And it's like, no, it turns out you haven't been getting enough sleep. That's why you're tired. Like you're not sick. You just need to get more sleep. But that's good. To be wrong, oh, I think I have a brain tumor. No, it's just a headache, whatever, right? I mean, so you want to be, so there's times when you're wrong and you totally win. Oh, my wife is going to leave me. It's like, no, she was just arranging for you to have a great anniversary party or something like that, right? No one's showing up to my anniversary party. Everyone hates me. It's like, no, it was a surprise party and blah, blah, blah. So there's times when you're wrong and it's fantastic to be wrong. If you say, I'm doomed, right? Like if you're driving and your tires skid and, oh my God, I'm doomed. And you go out into the middle of an intersection and no cars are coming. You were wrong about being doomed. Aren't you happy? Would you rather be doomed and be T-boned? No. Being wrong is great when you're in the wrong. So when I get involved in debates and so on, I'm looking for a win-win. I want to learn from the other person. They can learn from me. Now, if the other person comes across real hostile, fine. Then we'll throw down and we'll have that fight. And then the audience wins. I'm not looking to win myself. Then the audience is going to win. But yeah, it's amazing just how many people come across really, really aggressive and they say, well, the world is win-lose. And it's like, no. That's how you approach interactions is win-lose. If I'm not able to find a win-win, I don't want to play.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
And just say, C.S. Lewis actually, at the end of his life, he wrote a book called God, the Great Iconoclast. He never finished the book. But the idea was, no matter whatever we build in our mind, will be destroyed and rebuilt with something better. So we can't have 100% confidence in what we build in our mind. because there's always more. And what it does is extends to infinity, so that whatever C.S. Lewis went through, he always found new information and new ideas to replace what limited him. And what I liked about him is he's very very witty, very brilliant. But just that quote alone is, I think what we do is we build a God in our head, whether no God, or we build a God that is favoring only certain countries or creeds or cultures. And we have to kind of go back and kind of start over and say, maybe we need to talk about it, because sometimes we're saying the same thing, and, we're all just learning. So we can't, have all these closed doors and locked and everything like that. We have to have open-ended conversations.
Yeah,
Because,
and so many people are afraid of death, and they want to live forever, and I understand that for sure. And the best way to live forever is to say things that are true and that remain true. Because when you say things that are true and remain true, you do live forever, because what is true then passes to other people's minds. Because it's true and useful, they continue to pass it along to other people's minds. So Aristotle, who invented the 3 basic laws of logic and really invented logic as a syllogistical discipline, which he got a lot from Socrates, lives forever. Because fragments of Aristotle's minds condition everybody who tries to argue from a rational perspective. Pythagorean theorem is still being used. Pythagoras, because he said things that were true about the relationships of geometry, lives forever. So the best way to achieve immortality is to say things that are true and meaningful and important and remain true over time, which is why I've really worked to define ethics from a secular, rational, objective, philosophical standpoint, because that will define virtue going forward for all time. There is simply no way that rape, theft, assault, and murder cannot violate universally preferable behavior. There's a whole book on this. Essentialphilosophy.com is the best place to go and get a shortened version of that. It's in the last third of the book. But to say things that are true is to connect your temporary mind to eternal concepts and eternal truths. The guy who came up with numbers, 2 and 2 make 4, count to 10, count to 100, count to 1,000,000. He lives forever, because we're still using those numbers, and those numbers are true and valid. And so say as many true things as you can that remain important and relevant and meaningful. Communicate them as wide as possible. And outside of an eternal soul, which remains somewhat under question, at least philosophically, that is your best. In fact, I would argue your only chance to achieve immortality. All right. Is there anything else that people wanted to mention before we close down? And again, I really do appreciate everybody dropping by today.
Well, the last thing I just wanted to say is that touches into the idea of separation, and if there is any separation, or what it even is in general. And then you have to bring up salvation and what that even is, because if it's self-discovery at the same time as finding God, are you just looking in a mirror and really finding yourself? Because you're connected in that way, because you're feeling something. So it just kind of bridges together. And I think science, I want to see philosophy and science in psychology, all these things woven together, because we're running into it more often, and people matter. And I want to see them not rule God out, but I also think that they're, have a part of God in them. I think we carry God. Now, you could say, well, that's impossible, but, then why do people have near-death experiences? Why do people feel the divine? Why do people have a conscience? There's so much in that, okay? But
Well, I can speak on that.
anyone can argue, but I don't bring on arguing. What I bring on is a point of being, which is ontology, the study of your being. See, and that's what's most important, because how you feel, that's important to you and to me and to whoever is on this panel.
Can I speak to that?
Please do.
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
ahead.
Hi, guys.
Yes,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Hey, Jack. How are you? Okay.
go ahead.
This is very personal, and it's a small group, so I feel somewhat comfortable. I went through a very, very difficult time in 2015 with depression, I guess that, mental illness. And I tried to take my own life. I actually did pass away for 6 minutes. I was in ICU for a month because my organs shut down and whatnot. It's not one of my better moments, but I've always believed in God. I've always believed in Christ, the Son. And I can tell you that, when everyone says, oh, they see God when they die or they see something, I saw nothing. There was blackness, and then I woke up, and I didn't know that I was in a coma for, a week. I didn't know that they had put me in an induced coma. So was I frightened because I'm a Christian? Was I frightened? Is there no God? Was I frightened? Maybe I wasn't worthy enough. Maybe I wasn't following the law of being a good Christian, or, I love people enough. Do I love myself enough? Well, certainly I didn't love myself enough. Was it because I committed suicide? And that's, a sin. So, I go back and forth a little bit about what that meant. I speculate a lot, and I don't, know what I can convey other than it was a fearful moment when I realized that.
I'm really sorry to hear about your suicidal impulses, and I very greatly and deeply sympathize with that. And did you have a very harsh childhood?
Yes, I was the victim of sexual and physical violence and abuse until I left home. Well, I actually left home at 12 and stayed with a friend, and then I officially left home to be on my own at 15 and lived with a 21-year-old man. So, and my mother was completely fine with that and other things that today would shock people, of a 15-year-old daughter that, she, I don't want to say she turned me out, but she was pretty close to it. So,
And I'm so sorry for all of this. I have a daughter, and it's incomprehensible to me just how evil people's treatment of children can be. And where did the abuse come from? Was it within the family? Was there often it's a step
well, the
boyfriend or
physical
stepdad?
abuse was from my mother. A lot of the blows to the face, the head, kicking me, stuff like that. That came from my mother. The sexual abuse came from my father, and some inappropriate behavior, but not full-on sexual assault from my brother, but was inappropriate. This went on the last time my father. The last time my mother punched me, I was 24, and I never returned. But this is when I came home for Christmas. But my father, the last time he tried anything, I was 15 years old, and he showed up at that friend's house. It was one of my mother's friends that I was staying at, and it was my first car date, and I was 15 years old, and my father said, well, kiss daddy goodbye. And I did, and he grabbed my head and forced his tongue into my mouth in front of my date that was horrified. I was horrified. I was traumatized. I don't even remember the date. I don't even remember if I went. I remember just being horrified and him saying, well, you're going to kiss him like that.
Yeah.
He was an alcoholic.
Yeah, I mean, that's evil, absolutely stone evil beyond words. And, I sympathize on so many levels, on every level, I would like to think. But one of the big challenges, of course, is if you've gone through this kind of evil behavior. Sorry, I'm going to have to just mute.
I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. Once he did out, I would not try to drive away.
Somebody has joined who is needs to mute.
Neither will I.
If that's all right.
I mean, it's like asking to get a shot or something.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm going to just have to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So, for those, and I'm not going to put myself in your category. I had a tough childhood, but nothing like yours. So, yeah, you win. But if people have not seen or gone through this kind of evil, we kind of live in a different moral universe because, and I don't want to speak for you, I speak for myself. Maybe it matches your experience, maybe not. But if you've really, really seen the evil that human beings are capable of, and sexual abuse is really the greatest evil that can befall a child who continues to live. For me, sexual abuse is the worst, neglect is the next worst, emotional abuse is the next worst, verbal abuse, and then physical abuse is the least worst, which is still bad. But one of the things that's really alienating is there's a lot of people who go through life without really understanding how vivid and powerful and destructive genuine evil can be. And what you went through, I'm sure you would agree, but you're certainly welcome to disagree.
I do agree.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's genuine, deep evil that is powerful, incredibly destructive, unrelenting, and unapologetic. It does not reform. It does not improve. It does not get better. It is satanic, absolute, demons inhabiting the hearts and mind, evil. And if you've seen that, it's really, I don't know if you had this experience, it's really uncomfortable for other people because it kind of messes with their sense of reality. It messes with their sense of benevolence or kindness or other kinds of things. And when you have been the victim of genuine, deep, persistent, and unrepentant evil, you are kind of separated from everyone else in a way, and you're kind of alone.
Yes.
With that evil in your mind. And that evil, and this is where I think a lot of suicidality comes from. I don't want to speak to you, for you, of course, but I think a lot of it comes from they want you dead. Like evildoers, especially if you go out and tell, it's like, I'm going to leave the mafia. It's like, no, you're not. Because if you're going to try and leave the mafia, they'll kill you. And it's the same thing if you grow up with genuinely evil parents. Either you seal yourself up like a tomb and you pretend to be something you're not, and you pretend to have some sort of different history than you actually had, and you hide all these crimes and this brutality, or you speak about it. But if you speak about it, they want you dead. I mean, what is it that most child abusers do is they say, if you tell, I'll kill you.
They turn it back on you and say that you're the liar. You're a liar. That didn't happen. They will look you in the eye and tell you that never happened, even though there were witnesses to it.
Yep. And if you decide,
what is
if
so
you were,
strange is just to.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
So, and if those who abused you, if they knew you were going to the police with actual proof, and they were going to go to prison, and as child abusers and child molesters,
they'd kill me.
Yeah, they would kill you, right? So that is something that people don't really understand. They think that the evil is sort of out there, and that the organized crime and so on, and that's certainly there. But the real vivid evil that most people experience, sadly, is within the family. And it's 1 in 3.
It's funny you touched on.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, please, your story. Go ahead.
Okay, so a lot of people would become shut down, as you say, and be an ostrich in the sand and not speak about it and keep reliving the trauma. And other people will act out just like their parents did. Or lastly, in my case, they are still hypersensitive and get horrified by watching someone sexually abuse a child, or someone hitting a child, or hurting an animal. I remember my father picking up our cat and holding out our cat by the neck and strangling him in front of my mother and I. And, I am an extreme lover of animals, and either it amazes some people that I didn't turn out to be a serial killer or climb the tallest building with a long, I don't know if I can say that on there, but something that would hurt other people and aim at them. It's a miracle that I turned out the way that I did. Now, what happens I'm not a scholar, a philosophical person, but I want to explain myself the best I can. And let me just say that, Happy Jack, and there were, Jack, and several other people, I had reached out on social media because there was no one here to talk to. And let me tell you, sometimes this is life-saving, just as I came across you today, and I'm like, wow, I need to hear this gentleman, is that I had that ideation, and Jack and I think Christina, 4 or 5 other people stayed on the phone with me. And I put the phone down, actually changed into my pajamas, picked the phone back up, and we all talked. Jack, what time was it? It was like 6:30 in the morning when I finally fell asleep because you wouldn't let me be alone.
It was coffee time. Yes.
Yeah, it was coffee time. But, it's God, now I kinda lost my train of thought what I was getting to. But it's strange how you can turn out to be the worst person in the world, or you can become hypersensitive to it and yet still be self-destructive. How can that be?
Well, how old were you when you tried to kill yourself?
Well, I'm 60 now, and, that was 2015, so
Yeah, so 50, okay. 49, 50, okay.
yes.
Had you gone through anything where there was a particular revelation about your family's crimes that came out or you communicated to others around that time?
My mother's death,
Okay.
that, brought up a lot of up a lot of topics with family members after her death where I, was able to get the courage to they knew about it, but I got the courage to talk to them about it.
Right. Right. So you told, and the price of telling is what?
My demise,
Yeah. The price of
self-harm.
telling is death. So there's a psychologist, I can't remember his name, who said that every single suicidal patient has internal parental voices telling them to die, commanding
Yes.
their death. So the price of survival is shutting the hell up. And so if you break that omerta, you break that silence, and you talk and you tell, then the voices start commanding death.
Yes.
And that's why people don't tell. There is I guess you're old enough to remember the Menendez. You remember the Menendez brothers?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So for those of you who don't know, the Menendez brothers murdered their parents. This is not in dispute. One of them confessed to their
For after
psychologist.
years of sexual abuse,
Well, yeah, decades really. They were in their
allegedly.
Yeah. Well, I believe it. I believe it because
I believe it.
letters came up later where they were talking about it to people before any of this came up, right? So I personally, I
Yes.
believe it, and so on. I
Me too.
believe it. I don't have any absolute proof, but I've done a whole show on this for donors, but there is massive amounts of evidence. Anyway, so why
Children
did this?
usually don't kill their parents. It has to take some kind of absurd abuse for something like that to happen.
Right. And the father apparently was sexually abused, who then sexually abused them. And one of the brothers was writing to his cousin many years before the murders about all of this. And so I believe it for whatever reason. But the reason why the murder happened when it happened was because the boys were going to tell. And the older boy found out that the younger boy was still being sexually abused, according to these allegations. And he went to his father and said, stop. The father said, I'm not going to stop. And then the brother said, I'm going to tell then. And he said, hey, you tell, you do what you have to do. I'm going to do what I have to do. And anybody who understands this, you know kind of exactly what that means. And so the events were set in motion because the abuse of the younger brother was discovered. And the younger brother, of course, was hoping to get away from the abuse by getting away to college, but then the father wouldn't let him go. And the allegations, of course, are that the father would force sexual activity upon his child while sticking him with needles, like, and pins, and like just absolutely like horrifying, appalling, evil stuff. These are the allegations. I generally believe them, but again, I know that they've not been proven in a court of law. And so the murders, the death, the violence was set in motion. The moment you start to talk about abuse, the abusers kind of want you dead because they don't want to go to prison. They don't want to. And especially child molesters, you know what happens in prison, right? So if, with regards to your, I don't know for sure, this is obviously just amateur association making, but I would imagine that, for people out there, I would say that telling is good, telling is dangerous, because telling activates the self-destruction switch implanted by the abusive parents, if that makes sense. And so again, my heart breaks, and I'm incredibly sorry for what you went through. And I think that just be aware for people as a whole, if you decide to talk about the abuse, things get dangerous in my experience, psychologically. And hopefully be in professional care. I'm a big fan, of course, of therapy. My wife is been trained and practiced that for many decades. So I'm a big fan of therapy as a whole. And be aware, though, that revealing the abuse, especially if you fall into less than sympathetic hands, but revealing the abuse can be quite dangerous. And this is, it was dangerous for you, and I've certainly heard this from other people as well. And because, one of the reasons why I was deplatformed is that child abusers don't like me, of course, because I'm on the side of the victims, and I'm saying they don't actually have to spend time with abusers, and it was unabashedly evil what happens. So that moral clarity and voluntarism allows people to escape from very destructive, if not abusive, and perhaps physically dangerous situations. The criminals don't like it when you free the prisoners, and they may risk some blowback. So that's another reason why I was attacked. That's just kind of the deal. This is one of the reasons why philosophers don't generally stand up for children, which is the first people they should stand up for, is you get a lot of blowback from the abusive parents, and that's the deal. And then you see everybody running away from the blowback, and it's a bit...
I hope people don't think this is horrid.
I'm sorry?
But I actually found, I think it was a sense of relief when my mother died and my father.
Sure.
And I feel like a monstrous person for saying that.
Sorry, why?
I said that when my parents died, it was a relief to me.
No,
My
I
father
understand
died in
that, but why would you
2000,
feel
my
bad?
mother-
Why would you not feel relief? I'm sorry if I'm missing something.
I have no idea. I don't know why I feel bad for feeling relief that they're dead. And that's just, I have no idea.
You don't know why you feel relief?
Yeah, well, I feel relieved. I don't know why I feel bad about feeling relief.
Did you have a thought or a hope, perhaps, that your parents would change or reform over the course of their life?
110%.
Did they?
Never.
Right. And they can't. People who can do that to children have no relationship to their conscience that can ever help. You can't do that to children and then become a better person. It's just not possible.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Testing,
I'm
1, 2, 3.
having a bad connection. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I guess did they drop me?
I'm not sure. I can hear you fine. So when
I can hear you.
Yeah, so when abusers die, if you have accepted that they will not reform, they will not change, they will always lie, they will always cover up. If you have accepted that in the past, then the abuser's dying doesn't rob you of anything. Right? If you have a friend, sorry to trivialize it, but I have to sort of translate it into people who haven't suffered this kind of stuff, right? So if you have a friend, he owes you $1,000. And he keeps promising to pay you back, and you need that money, and it matters to you, then you have the hope, of course, that you're going to get your $1,000 back. If he goes and joins a monastery in Burma or Thailand, and he's off the grid and he's not having any income, he's living off saffron flowers and sunlight or something like that, then it's rational to say, well, I guess I'm not getting my money back, right? So you give up hope of getting the money back because he's moved to the other side of the world, he's given up on his income, and he's off the grid, right? You don't even know the address of the monastery he's at, like you're never going to see him and all of that, right? So with parents or others who are abusive, if they die and you feel bad, it's because, I don't know for sure, this is just my guess, right? But I would assume that it's bad because you have to give up the hope of connection. You have to, like, now they are beyond redemption, now they are beyond reversal, now they are beyond apology, now they are beyond saying sorry or providing restitution or validating your experience or whatever it is that you need to do, right? And in general, if you still have hope of affirmation, of reconciliation, of validation, of apologies, of restitution, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done it, here's why it happened, you're absolutely right, so, like all of that stuff, if you still have hope of that and people die, then the reason why it hurts so much is because you are now giving up a hope. The hope is now impossible to achieve. They will, because they're dead. They can't, right, provide you restitution. They can't apologize. They can't validate your experience. And all of that proof and all of that validation and all of that potential vanishes. So one of the reasons why I think it's important to recognize that people who are relentless child abusers will not change. They will not validate. They will not apologize. They do not have, and this is not just my theory. Like, if you look at something like bipolar or borderline personality disorder, sociopathy, narcissism, don't trust me. I'm not trained in these areas. I'm just a philosopher guy. I mean, I'm pretty well trained in philosophy, but that doesn't give me expertise in this particular area. But you can go and look up, you can ask AI and so on, can sociopathy be fixed? The answer is no. No. Nobody knows how to fix it. My mother was institutionalized, as people know, when I was in my early teens. They had full control over her. They could force her into therapy. They could do anything. They could give her any medications, I assume, to some degree that they wanted, and they had full control over her for quite a considerable period of time. Could they fix her? They could not. These are experts with full legal control over someone, which children don't have, right? They can medicate them. They can force them into therapy. They can force them into whatever they want to fix them, and they can't fix them. They cannot fix them. You and I can't fix them. If the experts with full legal control for a long period of time cannot fix people, you and I can't do it, right? I mean, they can't cure Scott Adams from his prostate cancer. I think now he's off the Pluvectin or whatever he was taking because his body is just shutting down. So he has a lot of money. He has a lot of connections, right? He got on this trial because of his political connections. Good for him. I would do the same thing. So the best experts in the world, and Scott Adams would give, I don't know what he's worth, right? But last time I think I read $70 million, and he said he lost $100 million supporting Trump. So, let's say he's got, I don't know, $50 million, $70 million or whatever, right? So any doctor that would cure Scott Adams would get $70 million. Because if you would say to Scott Adams, I'm going to give up I can cure you, but you have to give up your entire fortune, what's he going to say? Yes, of course I will, because life is more important than money. So the very best experts with $70 million or $50 million cannot cure Scott Adams, much to our great sorrow and much to our great regret and much to our great sympathy. They cannot fix him. Now, is it sensible then to say, but you and I can? I'm hoping that you and I'm going to go out and I'm going to wave my hands over his body, or if the best experts in the world with the most incentive and power and control and authority cannot cure him, you and I cannot cure him. We're not even doctors. And so if the best experts who get sociopaths, why do we have prisons if evil people can be fixed? They can't. They cannot be fixed. I'm not talking about people who've done wrong, like we've all done wrong, at least I certainly have, but I'm talking about, people who've done genuine, conscious, repetitive evil, particularly to children. They cannot be fixed. So when your mother dies, is it the death of your mother or the death of your hope that hurts? That's always the question. My father died, I think, 4 years ago. It was fine. I mean, it wasn't particularly bad. It wasn't, I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad, because I'd given up a hope on my father decades ago. So he wasn't really part of my calculation. So hope, the problem with hope with regards to evil people, and we can end here. And again, I'm sorry that we can't continue chatting, but I just massive hugs and sympathies for everything you suffered. Unbelievably, like deep, massive hugs and sympathies. But the problem with hope, my friends, is that hope gives evil power over you. Hope gives evil people power over you is a better way of putting it. And so people will dangle hope, right? Do you ever do this thing like you get some bad older brother and he takes your hat, he dangles it, you reach for it, but bullies will do that too, right? So the problem with hope is it gives evil people power over you. And if you give up hope to get restitution or acknowledgement or agreement or justification or explanations from evil people, if you give up that hope, you free yourself from their clutches. Hope is quicksand that swallows entire continents of human hearts. Do not have hope. Have rational expectations based upon the most foundational metric of human life. Most foundational metric of human life is that by far the best predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior. If you want to know how someone's going to act tomorrow, look at how they act yesterday. If you want to know how someone's going to act from 50 to 80, look how they act from 20 to 50. There is, and particularly if nobody's ever apologized, they're never going to apologize. If nobody has ever admitted fault, they're never going to admit fault. If nobody has ever been honest about what happened in the past, they will never be honest about what, right? Oh, but fingers crossed, but what if? No. Don't do the what if. Don't do it. I mean, you have less chance, like if somebody came to you and they said, I could save for my retirement. I could save for my retirement. Or, hear me out, I could play the lottery. What are you going to say? That's not a good plan. That's really not a good plan. And you can say, but it's not impossible. But we have to go on probabilities, right? You could blow through every stop sign. Don't, but you could blow through every stop sign and maybe you'll be fine. It's possible. You could drive blindfolded. Maybe you'll be fine. It's possible, but don't, because we have to go with probabilities. People without a conscience cannot regrow their conscience. Honestly, it's like expecting somebody who has lost an arm to grow it back. It is not going to happen. People do not develop consciences. Developing the conscience is like 13 different interchange parts of the brains all have to work in concert for you to get mirror neurons so you can feel what other people feel. If you don't get them, you don't get them. If somebody didn't get enough food and ends up being a foot shorter than they should have been, they're not going to get taller later in life. It's not going to be fixed. You cannot fix it. I cannot fix it. They cannot fix it. And hope, and I know it's a Christian thing, right? Because in Christianity, you still have your original soul that's in there, but that's not how the human brain works. And that is a superstition, and I'm not saying that all Christianity is a superstition, but the idea that there's a perfect person back in there. Like if you smoke and your lungs are black with tar, you don't have some emergency backup perfect pink lungs that you can access if you need to. Like your lungs are just messed. Like they're just effed, right? And it's the same thing with your mind. If you act in horrible, violent, vile, destructive, abusive ways, particularly involving this kind of abuse of children, you don't ever get a good conscience. You don't ever reform. You don't ever come back. Sometimes the devil swallows people whole, digests them, and there's nothing but liquid left, and they cannot be reconstituted. They cannot come back. Once you have harmed children in particular in this way, and in particular, Like, I mean, if you're a parent, every now and then you're wrestling with your kids and somebody gets an elbow or somebody gets a knee. Oh, so sorry, right? And it's an accident. You apologize and you try and make sure you reform to prevent it from happening again. But people who willfully, consciously torture and abuse children year after year, decade after decade, there is no coming back. There is zero coming back. You cannot fix it. They cannot be fixed. Nobody knows how to fix them, which is why we isolate them from society. Nobody knows how to fix them. Nobody with all the power and all the medication and all the authority and all the control, they cannot fix them. Nobody can. You can't fix them. I can't fix them. They can't fix them. Learning how to give up that hope is essential, because if you have hope, you'll stick around. Right? If you have hope, you'll stick around. And if you stick around, you're subject to them giving you or withholding something from you. If you think that evil people can save you from the unhappiness of having been a victim, then you will stick around waiting for that. And that gives them more power and control over you. And learning when to give up and to give up hope is essential, because every time you spend in the orbit of bad people is less time that you have good people around you and in your life. Sorry, somebody just wanted to jump back in at the end here. Is there anything you wanted to mention as we just closing things up?
Hey, so I guess while we're on the topic of parenting, I've often thought about what it is that makes people be able to hurt children compared to other people. And I feel like the people who find it easy to hurt children, it's because it's not that they give the children agency and responsibility beyond their sort of the sort of line we set at the age of consent or whatever. So it's like they hold the children to blame for the mistakes that they make, and then they feel justified to hurt the children. You get me? So it's like, it's not my fault as a parent that I failed to guide you, but it's like, you're just a bad kid. Like, I did everything right, but you're a bad kid, so therefore you deserve to be punished.
I think there's that for sure. The studies, though, are pretty clear that they get great pleasure out of it. I mean, they're sadists, right? There are sadistical people in the world, sadistic people in the world, and the happiness that you and I would get out of rescuing an animal, they get out of torturing the animal. And the happiness that you and I would get out of rescuing a child who's drowning, I'd be thrilled and happy, thank goodness, right? They get from holding the child's head underwater. And the wiring is it's just the opposite. And the brains are different. The brain scans are different. I mean, obviously they're human beings, but they're very different, and they're kind of opposite. So most people want to protect animals. If you have kids, I can't even tell you the number of animals that we've rescued over the course of my daughter's life, but it's been quite a few. And she wants to take care of them, and she wants to feed them, and she wants to nurture them, and she's just wonderful, and she's great with kids and all of that. Our kids absolutely love my daughter. She's like fantastic with kids. And so she wants to make people happy, and she's great at everything that she does involving people as a whole. And so if you have some kid who's been really brutalized, and maybe there's genetic elements to it, I'm sure there are, but they take immense joy and pleasure in harming children, like the woman who was talking about her father strangling. I'm sorry for such dark topics, but they're real, right? But the woman who was talking about her father strangling the cat, he took great, great pleasure in that. And is it comprehensible to you and I? No. Other than you can maybe imagine opposite universe, right? I was reading the biography of Marilyn Monroe, who grew up horribly abused. In fact, she got a dog. She took in a dog and domesticated a dog and loved the dog and so on. But the dog was kind of loud. And when she came back as a child one day, someone had sawn her dog in two and left it in front of her house. And that's, again, it's hard to comprehend. It really is very hard to comprehend, other than it's just the complete opposite universe. That which would give us happiness, and it gives other people horror, and that which would give us horror gives other people happiness. So our desire is to protect a child. Other people's desires are to torture and harm and destroy children. They take great pleasure in that. It is their great joy and happiness. And again, it is hard to comprehend, but facts are facts, brain scans are brain scans, and empirical evidence is empirical evidence. People take great pleasure out of harming children. I don't think it's innate. I think it is the result of being harmed themselves. And maybe there's some genetic elements for sure, but these are the kind of predators that exist in the world. And once you understand, I mean, one of the reasons I'm an advocate of the stateless society is that once you understand that there are genuine people who can't be fixed, who are evil, then you don't want to give them political power, because that's exactly where they're going to go. All right. freedomain.com/donate. If you, and I'm sorry, so for those of you who joined who were saying, well, a view count isn't that high, I get it. But I did have a message at the beginning, which has been resolved. There was a visibility restriction of this live at the beginning, and they have removed that. So hopefully the next one, again, I'm very happy with the Jazz Club. We don't need a stadium every time. And I really do appreciate everyone who's joined in, Kay and Happy Jack. And it's funny, you know, because I'm thinking like, wow, 60, that's kind of old. It's like, what number am I going to be this year? That's right, 60. So it's like, wow, it's kind of getting up there. It's like, she's like 3 steps above me. I'm like, whoa, are you okay? You're on the top of the world. So thanks everyone for dropping by. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. I'm going to be debating on the 28th of March in Atlantic City. I hope you will go to wordwardebate.com and sign up for that. freedomain.com/donate to help out the show. Really do appreciate it. Peacefulparenting.com to get your free copy of the parenting book. Please share that around. There's an AI there. You can ask parenting questions as well, trained on a bunch of my material. And shop.freedomain.com for your tasty merch. We now have phone cases and other things too with Freedomain stuff on it. So share your love of philosophy and help bring people to the conversation. Yes, Happy Jack, I see that. Beautiful.
You need a hoodie.
Yeah.
Do you have hoodies?
We do have hoodies. Oh,
oops.
We do.
I
We've got lots of great stuff. Yeah, shop.freedomain.com. All right, lots of love, everyone. Thanks, everyone, so much. We'll talk again soon. Bye.